is no death. It is only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 87 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. This week I'm going to visit the new Jewish cemetery, and quite by accident I also find myself going to the adjacent cemetery, which I didn't know about, called the Westfriedhof. Now, this recording was made live. It's much better than last week, and I do apologize for that because I bought myself something to put on the microphone to stop any bad noises. So here we go. I hope you enjoy it, and it is actually extremely dramatic. Well, I finally made it to the new Jewish cemetery. In the introduction to this episode, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I haven't done any research, in fact, because I just wanted to come and see this particular cemetery because it's the active cemetery, and it was the one that was used after the war, really, when the old one that I was in last time was closed. This is quite far out of town on Venloerstraße. It's next to a huge Protestant and I suppose Catholic cemetery called the Westfriedhof. I've not seen that before, so I want to go and visit that sometime. And this is tucked away in its own corner, and there seems to be a great big yellow building in front. It looks like it's almost a synagogue of some sort, and there are various monuments here as well. I'm standing right now, and it's in German, obviously, and it's saying in memory of the destruction or the persecution during the Second Reich, and in particular a night, I think a Pogromnacht, maybe that's the Kristallnacht, 9th of November 1938, Reichskristallnacht, when all the Jews here were and the houses were killed and the houses were destroyed. The rest were arrested, and many were sent off to die. And then in 1939, in this graveyard, lie many of the people who were killed, and in 1978 many people were restored, I think, to this graveyard from other places. And then also up front is a great big one, and it says this is a big memorial for the 11,000 sisters and brothers from from our community that were killed in the National Socialist racist regime between the years of 1933 and 1945, who died. And it's been put there by the Synagogue Gemeinde Cologne, and then I suppose on the other side is the same thing but in Hebrew. So on my left there's a wall going around the cemetery, but it's a big concrete wall. Now it reminds me again a little bit of how I felt in the old Jewish cemetery with all the barbed wire, but this is a great big concrete wall. It reminds me more of the Berlin Wall. But it seems to be probably, it seems to be really a wall deliberately just to cut off the tram lines that are running along there. There's obviously a big tram line, and I think it's called Schaffer's, I can just about read it, Schaffer-Radgasse. I'll carry on walking straight ahead. There's another memorial I want to look at. There's some very big graves here. Now that immediately hits me and surprises me, because I somehow again thought, after seeing the old graveyard last week, that most of these graves would be lying flat or at a slight angle, maybe facing up towards God almost. But no, they're really, really big and very tall stones, and quite elaborate graves. One here for the Unger family. Dr. Alfred Otter is there, Irina and Nina born Schönmann, and they were for 45 years exiled in London, according to this. These people died in various periods here on this grave, as recently as 1989. One of the most elaborate-looking, kind of almost housey things built here is obviously for an old rabbi. So they've given him a very grand, almost little house of his own. I'm walking towards a pyramid, a stone pyramid that's been erected. It's quite stunning. As I walk on left and right, I've got much more modern graves, all to the 60s, like Josef Bonniger and Eva Bonniger. They died in 69 and 66. And I've got others here who died in 1987, Margarita Höck, Benno Becker, and Judith and Dr. Leo Zelmanovitz. He died in 69 and she died in 2003, so we're much more modern here. They've got these lovely granite headstones, some with these amazing Jewish candles with these 8 candles that go on like branches on a tree with a star in the middle. Lots of those, and it's very beautiful. And then quite a few of these stones have pebbles that have been put on top of them, like I remember seeing in that Spielberg movie. And it's very beautiful in a way. I suppose it's some sort of memorial to people can put on top to say, I was here and I'm thinking of you, I'm remembering you. And on that subject, which is quite interesting, as I felt in all the graveyards that I visited, it seemed to be a very important thing that if there's going to be any point to having these graves, it's that people visit them and people remember them. And of course, I get the same feeling here that there's not one single person here, which is probably not unusual. It's just me. And there's nobody here remembering these people at all at the moment. They're not as well kept as the Protestant cemeteries, actually. They're looking all a bit rough and ready, and they need a bit of a clean. And a lot of the graves are all green from mildew and stuff. They need to be jet washed. I don't know. That's my feeling, and I'm getting that feeling from the people here that it's all a bit uncared for. And that idea of remembering came to me in something that I saw the other day, which I thought I'd share with you as well. It's come through to me from people whose energy is still here in these graveyards many times, that if people remember the people who are buried here, their energy will somehow be part of the energy of the people visiting. And that struck me as being the best point of having a grave and having a graveyard, is that people have to come and remember. They have to come and use this as a facility. I'm always getting that feeling from people here, and I'm getting it now, is that, there is a tremendous facility of the dead can offer us, the people who are not here and not in this dimension. They do communicate, and they can communicate healing, and they can communicate all sorts of positive thoughts to us, and encourage people who are perhaps sad or depressed. They can enable all of that just through the power of the energy that's still here. And it's coming out now more and more in the study of quantum and quantum mechanics, and how we perhaps will understand what reality is and what consciousness is. That all of consciousness very much reacts to the fact that people pay attention to it. We've had that before, that if you pay attention to something in a quantum state, it can actually act in a different way from the way it would react if you don't pay any attention to it. It's the same idea of this moving something. If a quantum particle moves millions and millions of miles away, another quantum particle will move almost as if it's copying that one. This now is really becoming part of mainstream quantum research and people's understanding of what reality is, and that it is very much affected by you paying attention to it. This idea that Jane Roberts introduced to me all those years ago with the Seth Speaks novel, all about thoughts creating reality, that is again what consciousness seems to be about. It's all about paying attention and wanting and thinking and desiring. And it seems to be extremely important that we pay attention to that. And a lot of religions have praying, or the Scientologists have this idea of using the mind to control things. A lot of people are learning that there is a tremendous power to change your reality through conscious will. And most definitely I feel here in this graveyard that is something that is definitely worth saying. So I'm standing now, and it's interesting to me again that they would choose a concrete pyramid, an Egyptian symbol, unsere Gefallenen, Reichsbund Jud Frontsoldaten. It's obviously again a huge memory of the people who died during the Third Reich time in Germany. As I come around this pyramid, it's actually not a pyramid at all. It's actually a triangular slab of concrete, and it just looks like a pyramid from the side. Behind it is a barbed wire fence, and then there's some rough vegetation, and then a hedge. And behind that I can see what looks like a sculpture, and it looks like people burning in a fire. I can't get to it because it's not part of the cemetery, but I'll definitely try to get to it. It looks very moving, and it feels tremendously like a Jewish memorial to those who died in the Holocaust. It's just strange how it doesn't seem to be a part of the cemetery at all. So on the right-hand side of this memorial, there are a lot more Jewish graves, and some quite recently, like 2023, I can see Heinrich Schatzmann. He died on the 31st of January 2023. He was born in 1939, just at the end of the war. Maybe he was 1 year old when the war ended. And others here, 2011 they passed on, or 1981, 2002, so it's much more modern. As I said, it's nothing like the graveyard that I was in before, the old one. Yes, this has a lot of people who've died more recently, but again, I'm very struck by the difference in the kind of style and quality of everything here compared to other cemeteries that I've seen. I don't know if this is a particularly Jewish thing, but there are no flowers here at all. There are some kind of pots where people have obviously planted something that's going to be hardy and long-lasting and requiring very little maintenance, or dried flowers almost. But there are no flowers at all, and I don't know if that's again a Jewish thing. I'll have to look into this. It's just completely barren and empty. I would be really interested in knowing what that means. And in this particular area, I can see a lot of stones that are standing up, but again I can now start seeing some stones that are lying not flat, but at about 45 degrees, 90 degrees upwards, so you can read them as if it's like a book coming towards you. And they're small square slabs, some from 1981. I've got the Kleinberger family here, Katharina, Dr. Emmerich and Anton. And Katharina died in 2010, Dr. Emmerich died in 2001, and Anton died in 1981. And then right underneath it is Immemorial Judith, 1934, and she didn't come angekommen. She didn't come back from Auschwitz in 1944. That's very moving. So these are people who they put a marker to remind us, but they never came back, and they're not buried here at all. It's just their memory. And there must be so many people, so many Jewish people who died in those death camps, that there's nothing obviously left, and nothing for the families to have. When I arrived in the cemetery, there was a big sign saying that it is part of the War Graves Commission, which in a way is a bit strange, because I actually don't see any war graves per se, although I imagine they're here. So I will look for them, but I can imagine that there wasn't an awful lot for people to bury, apart from people who perhaps were killed or executed in Cologne, and maybe they're buried here, but I will look for them as well. Maybe I can get some feelings as I'm walking around. Now I'm in the corner of the graveyard, and the Garbinskis, the Rudichs, the Gants, the Alfred Markus, Anna Rehan, Bertha Wolf, Max Laster, the Hofstadts, and Benno Berlin. It's a mixture of Hebrew and English. And now I'm standing in front of a very large tomb, and it says Hermann Buchsbaum, 10th of September 1875, died 6th of February 1933. And Selma Buchsbaum is here, who was born as Klugman, and she was put here on 28th of December 1878. Oh no, sorry, this was her birth date, 28th of December 1878, and it says she was murdered on the 2nd of July 1943 in Sobibor. It's amazing that they can be that exact with the date that she was murdered, since it was such an industrialized process with hundreds of people being executed, being gassed and burned in a single day. I don't know how. Maybe the Germans were tremendous record keepers there and kept detailed lists of who was executed when. I can't see that myself. I'm stopping in front of a grave because it's a great big white slab of marble. It's also got a bit of black stone in front of it as well, and it's the only one that's got flowers in front of it, although these flowers are really on their way to being rotten. No care at all. It was just put here, and nobody cares at all. These graves, whether they're modern or old, just seem to be left as if Jewish people feel there is no point. I need to find out more about that. But this particular white slab, Theo Stein, 1928 died, and Gustav Stein, who died 2nd of September 1942 in Auschwitz. Again, they know the exact date. And then there's a big black stone underneath saying Zum Gedenken, or in memory, for the Shoah, for the people who were killed in the Shoah. And it's from the members of the Kleinen Kölner Clubs, KKK. And it lists the names of the people and all their families in memories of all the Jewish Cologne people who were in the carnival clubs, and during the Nazi regime were taken away from their home and deported. So that's why we got flowers, because we've just gone through Cologne Carnival here. It's like 5 days of complete and utter madness now. It's just people drinking beer and screaming and having parades, and as like most of these carnivals now, they're just massive parties. And obviously the people who remembered the people here must have put the flowers there last week, which is why they are there. As I walk along, many of the stones are just illegible now. They've weathered away completely. They're all probably going back to the 40s and before the wars. I can't even read them. They're just blocks of stone now. I can just about make out the name Simon Cohen, and in memory of one of them, and it's not that old. I think it's 1929, one of them, and 1918, but completely weathered away because they're just not being cared for at all. I mean, if they bothered spraying them with cleaner and cleaning them maybe once every 5 years, they would last. But no, they're not. They're just left. It's as if part of the whole process for Jewish burials is the slow decay even of the graves. So I'm going past some more graves as I move more towards the front again, and you can hear the woodpecker in the background. The Solomons, the Dreyers, the Heinemans, the Mansbachs. And there's a nice chair here that I'm going to sit in for a little while. And it's right in front of Rami Oliel, born 1969 and died in 2015. So not an old person at all, but a very nice, very expensive looking slab of granite on the floor of the grave, as well as a stone going up, and some pebbles lying around it. And next to that is Boris Pronlilo, 1944 until 2017. It's all in, I think it's Russian, I can't read that. And Irina Pronlilo, she died in 2024, and it's a wooden memorial. Probably they're ordering the big stone. And right in front of Irina is Michael Licht. He died in March 2025, so almost a year ago, and he was born in 1954, so again, not so old. So moving towards the sort of west side of the cemetery here, towards the railway that I can see, in the concrete wall all the way along the side, which I presume is there to hide the railway. There's a mixture of old and new, people buried as recently as a few years ago, and the 90s. It's a bit noisier now, as you can hear, because I am right next to the tram line. And right at the edge here is Julius Katz, 1891 to 1935, and it says, in memory of his Chelmno and Auschwitz, his murdered wife and children, Gertrude Katz and Rosa Katz and Heinz Katz. Oh, that's terrifying. That's two young kids and his wife. He obviously never saw after they were murdered, and he survived, and then he died. Let me see. Oh no, of course not. I mean, he died in 1935, and the family, the wife was killed in 42. One of the daughters was killed in 44, and the other one in 42. So that's what happened there. And somebody's obviously put this stone up just to remember them all, which is nice. Okay, I'm actually on my bike now on a path which runs, as I said, along the edge of the railway line and the great big concrete wall to the left. I don't think anybody minds me riding my bicycle here. I can see some bicycle marks. I don't think you're allowed to ride motorbikes or drive a car, but I think they don't seem to mind people on their bicycles. Yeah, and I can see as I move towards the end here that it looks to me like I can get to that sculpture, because this now is opening up behind that pyramid, or that triangular piece of stone, and I'm moving into another section of the cemetery, so that's good. So I can actually come in here, and this looks a lot more modern. I can see that these are all people who passed in the 90s. Oh yes, and as I move now towards the east, it's a whole different sort of, it's like a great big field now rather than a cemetery. It's all very, very new, and every stone you can see is this modern type of upright black and grey marble. Yes, and I can see that there's only half of this field is used, so it's all ready for many, many more graves to come. So this is obviously the latest bit, and I'll cycle down a little bit more, and I can see these people have all been buried in 2012, 2010, 2025. And again, I must say, in my ignorance, I had no idea, of course, that there were that many Jewish people still living in Cologne. I know that there's a couple of synagogues here, but there obviously is still quite a big community of Jewish people here. 2017, these are obviously all the new graves. 2020, 2022, 2021. Some of the names here probably reflect more the international nature of the Jewish people. We have Alter Shlomo, died in 2024. And it says King Salomon on it. I don't know why I would say that. Rebecca Gotthard, born as Goldman Cohen. It seemed to be Iosif Grinberg, Lilia Tatur, Sophia Gontmacher, Jeffin Rothstein. Again, I suppose perhaps a lot of Jewish people must have moved here after the war as well, or moved back after the war, but from many East European countries perhaps. I'm not too sure about the history of that. Arkady Kogan, so that sounds something East European. Mark Vaskovich. So now kind of into the heart of this newer part, and I have to take back what I said about flowers. I mean, these are all graves that go to 2000, 2001, and most of them seem to have beautiful sunflowers and fresh flowers. So that is very much contradicting what I thought, and nearly all the graves around here have lovely flowers on them. So I suppose it must be all to do with the ages, how long people have been buried. The ones that I'm looking at, people died in the year 2008, 2004, and stuff like that. So there are a lot of people who remember these people and are coming with their flowers, that's really lovely to see. I'm so happy to hear that. It's such a nice feeling when you see graves with flowers and people remembering the people who died. Well, as much as I want to, I don't seem to be able to get into that central square there, which looks to me like it's probably where people who've been cremated are put. I can't seem to get into there. I'll see if I can go around, because I really would like to see that sculpture. No, it really looks like we're not wanted in that corner. I've just cycled all the way back to where I'd come from, and I'm in front of the barbed wire and the wall and the hedges, and there's no way in. I can see as I look over the fence that it's a lot of slabs in the ground, but they're all identical, and it does look like a war grave. It must be the Commonwealth war grave, but they're not allowing anyone in it. It's completely fenced off and you can't get in, which is a real shame. I can't imagine why. I'll have to look into that. But I'm sitting outside it amongst again some newer graves. Michal Epstein, 2020, 2014. I've got people who died in 2015. So I'm surrounded by lots of people who've died in the last 20 years. And I felt like sitting here for a while. And it's lovely weather, blue sky and sunshine, freezing cold. But I feel very welcome here. I feel surrounded by people. I can see some newer graves. Certainly there's no sense of worry or sadness for me. So I've now found myself in the Westfriedhof, this cemetery next to the Jewish cemetery. And I was very much drawn here, and I didn't really know why, but I've just pulled in, and as I came in, and I've just walked up into this amazing open space where they've cleared all the trees, and it's a huge, great big memorial. I can only say to you it's about at least 100 meters by 100 meters wide, and it's full of stone crosses, beautifully landscaped with a big cross right at the end. And it's called the graveyard for the people, the Germans who fell during the war. In a way, having read through the whole description here, it's another really rather slightly cynical use of dead people to try and glorify the National Socialist idea. What they did during the war was find a place to bury people who had died during all the bombing campaigns of all the Allies, and they talk about the thousands of people who died during the bombing, and I think at least 2,000 of them are buried here. And a lot of people died during what they called the 1,000 bomber night on the 31st of May 1942. And there were so many people, local people, who were buried under the rubble that it was extremely hard to get them out. So they actually used the prisoners from the Buchenwald concentration camp, who I presume again were mainly the Jewish people, to come and dig out the dead bodies underneath all the rubble and bring them to this graveyard. It's incredibly ironic and rather sad that right next to the Jewish cemetery are probably people who were murdered, if they even made it back to Cologne, or they probably were murdered in Buchenwald and were buried there. But it's very ironic that the Jewish people were used to find the bodies of Germans as slave labor that had died during the Allied bombing of Cologne. And the German citizens were buried here, and they were then deliberately buried in a way that made them appear to the population that they were not just people who died, but they were heroes. And it was used as a sort of National Socialist PR campaign, propaganda, to call them people who had fallen, people who were heroes, people who died for their country, even though they were literally just sitting in their houses when they were bombed. This was a deliberate attempt to bring the front line of the war to people's homes, to make everyone feel a bit more cohesive and part of the whole the war campaign. And this whole cemetery here was apparently built along the lines of a war grave in order to make everyone feel that they hadn't died for nothing by being bombed in their houses by the Allies during the 1,000 bomber bombing. So yeah, and most of the people buried here then are people who were just innocent civilians who died, and not actual soldiers, or what you would call the normal war dead. But it's everything that you would expect a Nazi showpiece to be. You could say it's almost like the sort of Nuremberg rallies here, but for dead people. It's a huge, great big thing, and they're all facing forward to the cross. It's a very imposing piece of war grave, and I'll go down the stairs towards some of these graves. And yes, I can see that they're all just ordinary people, like Anna Michalek, Anna Machery, Francesca Hambloch, Emmy Hertz, all died in 1944 during that raid. Frau Clemens, Martha Krull, Anna Brand. So this is all just German civilians laid out here as if they were the glorious dead of other graveyards from the Commonwealth war graves, and made for PR purposes, for propaganda purposes, to look like the heroes who had fallen on behalf of the Nazi regime. Oh, and I just got a tremendous sense from a lot of these graves. They were shouting up at me this cynicism of using their deaths to somehow prop up a regime that was so evil and so ruthless in the way that it would communicate what it was doing as if it was all honorable, when really, they were murdering millions and millions of Jews and millions of other people who were not necessarily Jewish but just opposed the regime, or were handicapped or ill, or just foreign people who they didn't like. And when people died in their own country, their own people, they cynically used their deaths as propaganda. And I think there are a number of them here. I feel the energy. It's as if to say, they don't want to be here. They really didn't want to be part of this propaganda. And it's it's a very strong feeling, a very unusual feeling. I've never felt that before ever when I've been in a graveyard. That feeling from these people, they don't actually want to be buried here at all. But the rest of this cemetery is cycling through. It's just a normal cemetery for Catholics and Protestants. It seems to be very much a living cemetery. People buried here in the 2012. Some people buried more recently than that. So most definitely it's a living, breathing cemetery. And I can move here towards another grave, which is really gets my attention because it has a lovely white bench next to it. And it has 3 or 4 other chairs there as well, as if it's really an invitation for people to come and sit here. And there's a locked box that's like a seating box that you can sit on, which maybe has stuff attending the grave, but it's as if, it's really an invitation to come and sit here. And it's the name of Reichert Christine. She was born Mettbach, born in 1955, died in 2024. I don't know who this lady was, but it's a very grand stone made in the shape of a granite heart, and a picture of her there, a lovely, pretty looking lady. And Familia Osterwind, and then Johanna Olmert, 1913 to 1989, and then Horst Olmert, 1938 to 2005, and Ursula Olmert, 43 to 2023, with lovely sort of laser-etched pictures of how they looked probably in their 20s. That's very unusual. I've never seen that before. And another quite grand-looking grave for the Mettbachs, Josephine and Joseph. Josephine died in 96 and Joseph died in 1998, and it's still got candles burning and looks very cared for. And then Karl Mettbach, he died in 2025, born 2 years after me in 1962, Karl, so he wasn't that old. And Helga, she was born in 46, died in 25. So, quite a few modern graves here, and interesting graves and interesting stories, I'm sure. I'm sure Christine Reichert won't mind me sitting down here. She's, as I said, she's got lots of chairs, obviously has lots of visitors, and that is lovely. I really feel good about that, Christine, that you've had so many visitors here, and you've got chairs where people can sit. You can have a whole family reunion here. You must have been very loved, or people were holding on to your every breath. It's lovely here. It's if it wasn't so cold, it would be like summer. A really beautiful graveyard here, and with all the different types of evergreen trees with ivy growing up them, and it's a lovely park. And the weather couldn't be lovelier. Lots of flowers on the graves, and again, very movingly, a lot of candles, and some are real candles. So people have been coming here and lighting candles and remembering people, which is nice. I don't feel that there's anything special anybody wants to say to me here, particularly. I do get the sense that it's a very peaceful place, and maybe most of the energy has gone. I just get that sense as I look to my right at the memorial for the people who were killed in the bombing. That feels rather strange, and it does kind of upset me as well, because it's upsetting the people who were buried there and their energy that's remaining. So I felt drawn back again to all these people who died during the bombing, and I'm standing right at the other end now, right at the big concrete cross, and Josef Müller is here, Frau Ernst Wilhelm. These people died in 1943, and the Schumachers, Josef Muller, Christine Steinhauer. And I'm going to walk up the stairs at the end of this that lead to the mound that this big stone cross is put on. And I get the impression from the way this is all laid out that it's like a great big amphitheatre, and people are standing in attention as if they were at a rally, like it might have been during National Socialist times. And it's supposedly been designed like that. You could, standing at the top here, I feel like those pictures you saw of Hitler in front of his masses, addressing them from a central point with everyone looking up adoringly at him. And this is the way this has been laid out. It's been laid out like a sort of Nuremberg rally. You've got a row of these beautifully laid out graves of people who died. Some 1944 again, and on the right the same, and in the center you have the big cross, the big memorial cross, and somebody's placed a wreath there, probably maybe during Carnival as well. So there are definitely people who remember things, and maybe it's nice to remember this as just a place where people who died as civilians were memorialized. It's just that the purpose of doing it for the rather corrupt reasons of propaganda is not very nice. And then on the right hand side again, all standing at attention, we have a bunch of you, all died in 1944, again during the bombing. Margarita and Elizabeth, and and I can stand at the top here, at the bottom of the cross, looking down over a huge expanse of people all looking up at me. But again, the messages that I'm getting, I mean, people are, there's not much energy here because it's a construct. And I'm getting that feeling from people that there's some people here who seem to be fine. They don't mind being here, but a lot, the energy is like sending me this message. You know, they've gone. They didn't want anything to do with this showpiece. It is quite sad that people's final resting places, or whatever was left of them after the bombing, wasn't of their choice at all, and it wasn't really of their family's choice. And again, I wonder how many of these actual graves were dug out by Jewish people, Jewish prisoners of war, who, after they probably had dug these people out of their bombed out homes and maybe buried them here, were then driven off to, or trained off to Buchenwald to be executed by the Nazi authorities. Truly sad story, and quite a feeling I'm having here. And right in front here, there are a number of stones, and they've got written on them Unbekannter 1943. So it's as if they couldn't recognize the body. It's an unknown person. Unbekannte Frau 1943. So it shows you how many probably of these bodies weren't even recognizable, and people didn't even know who they were, and they were just buried here as well. So I think that's really all I feel like doing now. I'm not sure that I'll be going to many graveyards anymore. I think this is kind of showed me something which is a sad thing, is that yes, everyone here has died, everyone is passed on, but using people and using their bodies for political ends is a really sad, cynical way to use somebody's death and to sort of glorify a regime that was cynically killing people en masse, and using the people that it was going to cynically kill en masse to bury its own subjects in a grave that was somehow being designed to glorify what they were doing to people. And it really is a really sad, sick thing, and it shows you just how devastatingly awful a regime like that can be, and how it can corrupt the people who live here, who are probably on the face of it good enough people, and how it's even corrupted these poor hundreds of people who are buried here and use them for political ideology, even though probably most of them probably had no idea that their bodies were being rescued by Jewish people and maybe buried by Jewish people who were going to be murdered for their effort, for no other reason than they were Jewish. And then, to make it even worse, to be laid out in such a way that I can really feel them, and it makes me so sad. You know, that they're being used to glorify this disgusting regime and the disgusting death heaped upon millions of poor Jewish people. It's the final indignity, really. Anyway, with that, thank you very much for listening, and to all of you out there, please, this is the last message that's coming through to me. They're saying, please, don't walk blindly into a situation where your government is lying to you and is going to kill people and be cruel to people, and you're going to become part of that whole arrangement. Watch out, because history does repeat itself. Somebody is saying to me, history does repeat itself. All of this is a warning that the terrible things that can happen in a civilized country, in living memory just about still, and how everything can be twisted to make it appear that it's good, but really it's just devastatingly awful and involving the murder of people for people's political ends. That was yesterday, as I had just about finished walking around the West Cemetery. Now, something very strange happened when I was there, and I only realize now, after what happened to me when I left, what was going on with me, which I want to tell you about. As I was leaving the prison, I call it a prison, but it felt like a prison. As I was leaving the graveyard, I really was feeling like I'd been attacked from all sides. There were so many voices, so many images in my mind, that I really was becoming quite disorientated. It wasn't until I got home and then decided to try to rest that it all became quite clear to me what had happened. First of all, normally when I go to a graveyard, or if I make contact with any entity, I do a protection ritual. But yesterday I completely forgot. I don't know why. Maybe it's deliberate, but I completely forgot to do any form of protection ritual. And as a result, I think I was completely overwhelmed by spirits, entities, whatever you want to call them, trying to come through to me. And I really could feel that as I was standing there at the end, as I think you can tell. But to make matters more dramatic, and again, a real cautionary tale as to why I must never forget to do a protection ritual, was when I got home and I sat down and I tried to relax, I had these incredible visions, and everything was coming to me about what had happened in that West graveyard. As I said at the beginning, I hadn't done any research on these graveyards, so I didn't know much about what had happened. But I can tell you what I felt and the visions I saw, and it was almost like a movie as I was sitting in my chair. And it was so bad, eventually I ended up having to go to bed because I just needed to try to switch off, but I was finding it very hard because I'd opened myself up to so many images and so many voices and feelings that I was completely overwhelmed. Well, what I saw was that what is now that what they call the war memorial there. I saw it as it was being built, and I saw trucks. I saw the traditional kind of German Second World War trucks. I saw soldiers, and they were bringing in bodies, and they were digging the graves, and I saw people actually doing the work, and I was again completely shocked at what I was seeing. And what I saw and what I became to understand was that these were not just victims of the bombing. They were putting into the ground people they'd executed. The Germans had executed soldiers or executed prisoners of war, and they were secretly trying to bury them in this graveyard. And I felt like they were doing it under the cover of these German citizens who were being buried there because they were killed in the Thousand Night bombing raid. And that really disturbed me. And these images became stronger and stronger, and more of the voices were coming to me to tell me that they were buried there, and that their relatives don't know that they're there, that they were killed and they were secretly buried to get rid of them. It was really quite tragic, and that's probably why the energy is so strong, because they're still hurting in a way. They're still wanting people to know and that they're there, and to be recognized, and for their relatives to know what's happening. And as far as the rest of it was concerned, I suppose it just confirmed to me the real sadness of that particular graveyard. I've never felt anything like it. Now, I came home, as I said, and I rested, and I've had a good night's sleep. And today, as I'm preparing the podcast for broadcast, I've just done some research into it, and I thought I'd share with you what I've read about it. And it says that it has 3,800 war graves, and it's one of the most important sites in Cologne. And it's recognized as a place for the victims of National Socialism. And most of the people in there died between 1939 and 1945 in Cologne. It is a certified grave for war graves. It has a conservation status, but a lot of the graves have not been maintained. Now, I obviously saw that, but other graves that I didn't see, which is what I felt were there, that represent the sort of 200 graves, I understand, from Germans of soldiers and bomb victims who didn't want to be buried there. The relatives wanted to bury them privately and not necessarily there. So I must have been feeling that as well. But 800 graves are also no longer preserved for German and foreign Nazi victims. And now, when they were creating the war graves list, they already found there were some major discrepancies as to what was going on there. And they found numerous victims of executions from the Klingelputz prison. And they were also freed foreign forced laborers from 1945, prisoners of war and concentration camp prisoners, all probably executed at the end of the war, maybe in some sort of mass panic, and buried there hastily. So, yeah, that's what I felt, and it's incredible now reading this, that's what happened. And as far as the Jewish cemetery, the one I visited first, which is called the Jüdische Friedhof Köln Bockelmünd, that place was established in 1980 because of the overcrowding in the cemetery that I visited last week. Now, most of the tombstones, as you know, from what I've described them, are quite striking, and they have stars of David and menorahs and various other Jewish symbolism on it. It is huge. It's 45,000 square meters with approximately 2,800 gravestones. Now, obviously, there's a lot of horror there too, because it's a silent witness to the Holocaust, and it reminds everybody who's visiting of the persecution and loss suffered by the Jewish community. It is a beautiful cemetery. There is a museum that I couldn't get into because everything was locked up. I don't know what else I can say about that, other than I'm just still feeling terribly sad that people who were murdered by the people who are probably lying in the adjacent cemetery are right there now together in death. But people who were also murdered by the Nazi regime are also lying with them. So it's an incredible feeling in that little location where you've got the people who've just died of natural causes, you've got the people who were killed in war, the people who were killed and executed by the Nazis, and you've got the innocent people who died when their houses were bombed. And a last thought, which is a personal thought. In the summer, I was in Suffolk, and my brother took me to Parham Air Museum with my two daughters. He volunteers there, and it's a museum, and it was where the United States Air Force based its huge bombers during the Second World War. And out of that museum, and out of that airport, which is still there, but it's obviously not used as an airport anymore, the bombers that contributed to the 1,000 bomber tragedy, or whatever you want to call it, that came over in Cologne, took off from there. Many of them took off from there. And we were there, and we actually saw on the wall a written list of all the various targets that had been designated and bombs had been delivered. And I remember seeing that particular list with my town, Rodenkirchen, on it in Germany. And the attack had been launched from that air museum where my brother works in Suffolk. So it's a very strange thing. Here I am in Germany, living in a town as an Englishman that was bombed to hell by the Allied forces during the Second World War. And my uncle was a mosquito pilot, and he didn't fly from Parham Air Museum, but he flew from somewhere in England, and he was involved in that, and he was responsible, as all mosquito pilots were, as pathfinders. They would lead the bombers to where to drop the bombs, and they carried flares, and they could light up the ground so people could see so the navigators could see where to drop the bombs. And so, yes, in some twisted way of history and reality, my own uncle was involved in the destruction and the murder of thousands of people that night, of the 1,000 bomber. And so it's a very personal thing. I feel that energy, that weight of historical responsibility on me as well, and I felt that in the graveyard. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll listen again soon.